What's up, everybody? I'm Michael, and today I'm going to be giving you all a spoiler-free review of the latest Tom Cruise action adventure, Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. This is the 8th installment of the Mission Impossible franchise, and a direct continuation of Dead Reckoning, as we follow Ethan Hunt and his IMF team continuing the search for the terrifying AI known as the Entity, which has taken over intelligence networks all over the globe. With the world's governments and a mysterious ghost from Ethan's past on their trail, joined by new allies and armed with the means to shut the Entity down for good, Hunt is in a race against time to prevent the world as we know it from changing forever. When it comes to long-running action franchises, Mission Impossible has always remained my favorite. Ever since the release of Mission Impossible 3, this series has gotten bigger and better, not only with action set pieces and locations, but also with the storytelling. They've always found a way to blend all these elements together, and it's exciting every single time with each new movie. Ghost Protocol, Rogue Nation, Fallout, Dead Reckoning. These are some of my favorite action movies of the century so far, and Tom Cruise and Christopher McQuarrie have done a masterful job pushing this franchise to new and exciting heights. All of this has led to Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning being one of my most anticipated movies of 2025, because of how the previous movies have turned out, and they were just so good. I'm sure that there was immense pressure from the cast and crew to deliver a satisfying conclusion to this incredible franchise. I'm sure everyone in the making of these two movies are just relieved that they're finally out, because this was no easy task. Dead Reckoning suffered a lot from the COVID-19 pandemic, and The Final Reckoning was one of the many victims of the 2023 double union strikes. But even after everything that has happened, did Tom Cruise and Christopher McQuarrie deliver a satisfying conclusion? For the most part, I think they did. In many ways, Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning feels like a greatest hits collection from the entire series. The action set pieces in this movie are nothing short of mesmerizing, along with some beautiful locations to go alongside the overall narrative. Because this is a Mission Impossible movie, you expect Tom Cruise to go all out, and he does not disappoint here. Not only are his stunts in here just completely ridiculous and just insane, but his performance as Ethan Hunt might just be my favorite of the entire franchise. He's got the same charm and charisma that you've seen from the previous movies, but there's also a sense of urgency and finality in his performance, and I think Tom Cruise excelled at all of that. Since this is a direct continuation of Dead Reckoning, the villain is the same, with the rogue AI, the Entity, being the main MacGuffin. Despite the Entity being entirely AI, you really do get to feel the devastation and its consequences, not only from the end of Dead Reckoning, but also to how the characters are dealing with it in this one. I was honestly kind of shocked to see how somber this movie was during the first hour, which brings me to my biggest complaint. I've heard some of the early reviews indicate that the first hour was pretty messy and exposition heavy, and after seeing the movie, that is definitely the case. The Final Reckoning tries to connect all the previous 7 movies together into one, and while the idea sounds fine on paper, the overall execution has a lot to be desired. It feels like Christopher McQuarrie didn't have a full-on plan on how to open up the movie and tying all these loose ends together. Things do eventually sort themselves out as the movie goes on. It just takes a minute to get there, and I was feeling a bit worried. At a runtime of 170 minutes, you really do feel that runtime around the beginning. Of course, you've heard this line in the trailer. It's when Ethan Hunt says, "I need you to trust me one last time," is when the movie finally picks up again. From that moment, I was immediately locked in, as Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning becomes an electrifying thrill ride that just had me on the edge of my seat until the very last frame. This movie has some of my favorite character moments of the entire series, particularly with Ethan, Benji, and Luther, as they all have a pivotal role to play. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but the action sequences in The Final Reckoning are just absolutely ridiculous and amazing. There's more of a gap with the action sequences than usual, but when those scenes hit, They hit so hard, man. Tom Cruise does some insane stuff in The Final Reckoning. He just continues to amaze me as an actor and a performer. This movie is no exception. There's a scene where Ethan is holding on to dear life on a biplane in South Africa, and there's also a horrifying sequence involving a submarine. None of the trailers do any of those scenes justice, by the way. I saw this movie in a packed IMAX theater, and everybody was just glued to the screen. I even heard some people gasping at what Tom Cruise was doing. It was just genuinely insane. I couldn't even believe it. Of course, Tom Cruise lived to tell the tale, but I'd be lying if I said that I wasn't fearing for his life watching this movie. If you decide to see Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning in theaters, first of all, you should. I would highly recommend seeing this in IMAX. Dead Reckoning got the short end of the stick with IMAX back in 2023, and I'm incredibly happy that this one is getting a 3-week long IMAX window. There's only a few sequences in the IMAX ratio, but when those scenes are on screen, McQuarrie and crew make sure to make those moments count. Despite an iffy start, The Final Reckoning leads to a satisfying conclusion to the Mission Impossible series, and I'd be perfectly fine if this was the ending for the foreseeable future. I'm just not sure how you'd continue this story because everything that happened here feels conclusive. Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning might be my least favorite Cruise and McQuarrie collaboration, but that doesn't make it any less satisfying and epic. Because even a slightly weaker Mission Impossible movie is miles better than the majority of action movies that we get today. Tom Cruise and Christopher McQuarrie have done an incredible job with this series, and I'll be forever grateful with what they brought to the table with these last 4 installments. I also just want to give a big thank you to the entire cast and crew that are keeping the movie theater experience alive. Tom Cruise came out with Top Gun Maverick back in May 2022, and that just revived the entire theater industry. As Spielberg would put it, he literally saved Hollywood's ass. With all of that said and done, I'm going to be giving Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning an A-. Well, guys, those are my thoughts on Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning. Let me know what you all thought about the movie in the comments below. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to give it a like rating, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And I will see you all next time.